Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. You nervous?
A little bit, but we'll ease into it.
What's the biggest thing you're nervous about with this?
Mostly because I wasn't planning on coming here to Docs, but I guess, there's a first for everything. I'm excited to show my face to the community and get to know our holders more on a personal basis, because most of the time when you're in Web3, it's kind of like there are these personas and you don't know who's behind the personas, and that's kind of been the mystery of a lot of projects. But I think now we're shifting away, and I think it's a good shift towards these are the people who are running it. These are what they look like. These are the personalities. These are the people behind the project, as in, instead of just there are these entities who are kind of mysterious. So I think it's good to get more of a relationship with your holders and actually get them to relate to you more on a personal basis than this is the guy who's holding our bags up or down. Yeah. So I think it's a good shift, and I'm excited to
it's a shift to transparency, right? Yeah. Because I think when you're in a bull market, I think for the most part, if my bags are going up, I trust it, right? And now we're in a part where people actually want to get to know the founders a little bit more. They just want to know a little bit more of who are the people that are behind these projects, right? Exactly. So I've been excited to get to know you guys. We had a fun time last night. We had a good old time. We went to a little brewery in LA, and we had a little Web3 meetup. It was a great time. We had probably, 25, 30 people. It was a good time. So, did you guys have a good time last night?
I mean, we met a lot of dope people, and it was really sick to see, to meet these people and then hear who they are within Web3, because like I said before, you don't really see that on the other side of the screen, and now you see oh, I'm this person from this project, and it's oh wow, you can associate the two, and you hear their stories, their backgrounds, why they started the projects, what they've done in the past, and it's really dope to see and kind of get to know their other side of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part about Web3 is actually the meetups, when you get to know people and you're hey, so why are you excited about this project? Why are you not so excited about this project? What do you what got you into the Web3 and everything like that? So let's get into that for a second. But before we get started, so for people who don't know who you guys are, can you give a brief, just who you are real quick? Just introduce yourselves. Aladdin, why don't we start with you?
I can start, yeah. So I go by Aladdin in Web3. I'm half Persian originally, half Indian. I grew up in Thailand for most of my life, and I've always been focused towards finance as well as the computer science development aspect. So I've had a lot of experience in investment banking, as well as within different startups. For example, my previous startup I was working at was more a software development company, where the project that I was managing, so project manager of, it was a dropshipping application. So I was managing that, and we had an application being built on Shopify. So it was really good experience getting that kind of project management experience. And I've also had different analytical internships with investment management. So that was interesting. I think what really led me to Web3 and kind of shifted away from that traditional finance aspect, which I was more shifted towards my whole life. I was more always focused on, I want to grow up the corporate ladder, and get this investment banking job where I can, make this amount of money and make these connections and maybe start my own thing. But with Web3, I really liked the decentralized aspect of it, and how really there's so many opportunities available for anybody, because you can start whatever you want to start and kind of not have that initial barrier to entry. And I really like that, because in the traditional finance world, especially when it comes to investing or starting projects or corporations, there's always that kind of hurdle you have to go past. These are my credentials. This is who I am. Kind of put your faith in me. Whereas with Web3, it's kind of you don't have that barrier. You just you can just be yourself, and then people will trust you based on what you provide them with, right? It's not they don't look at like, this is your resume or whatever. It's more like, this is the person behind it, and this is like, these are his goals and aspirations, and like, this is how he plans to achieve it. Do we believe him or do we not believe in him? Like, I really like that aspect. So that kind of aspect of decentralization with crypto is something that really resonated with me and really got me interested in crypto first, and then the NFT space. Actually, Henny was one of the first to like introduce me to NFTs, so he can speak on that. But what I really liked about NFTs mostly was the way that like you can have your idea and you can present that idea, but you also have a community backing you, and you have these people who are not just your like investors as you have traditionally, but they're also like really like, it's hard to explain, but they're you know, there's like more of a personal relationship with your investors, and I think like that's really cool because you can have their input, you can have their like suggestions, you can have like your whole vision being brought to life with those people that believe in you, rather than you're the one leading it and they're just a side part of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. And so, Henny, I know you've been sitting here for a second. Why don't you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, man. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say thanks. Thanks for having us on. It's super dope to be down here and met a lot of cool people yesterday. But yeah, no, my name's Henny. My name's Henry, from Vancouver, Canada. Currently, we're based in Montreal. I met Aladdin when I was in Montreal, and as well as the other guys that we founded this project with. Basically, how it came about is we saw.
Actually, wait. Before we even get into, just actually, you know what? That's a great introduction. I want to know from there, before we get into how you guys started Fat Cats and kind of where the idea came from and everything like that. I want to first get into, I guess, like how did you guys get into the NFT space? So, you know, I know that you brought Aladdin in, but how did you get into the NFT space?
One of my good friends dropped a project right after Degen Apes. Okay. It was a project called Solians. One of the first DAOs on Solana. They were doing stuff with Star Atlas. And when I saw what he was doing and sort of just like what it was about, it seemed like, I was like, wow, like where is this coming from? It seemed like it was just coming out of nowhere. And he had all these plans and he was telling me about like what a DAO was and all the things that they were planning on doing with what they were launching here. And I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. And so I asked him, I'm like, hey, can I be a part of it? Like, can I do this with you? And he was like, oh, sorry, like we're sort of like too far along. We've got to this point already. We're minting in like a week. There's nothing you can really do. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, damn, I think maybe I should try it myself. And so I got together with like 6 of some of my like closest friends, guys who I thought were like some of the smartest people I knew. Aladdin was one of them. And we started it. And so that's like when my journey into the NFT space like really started. Was I think it was August of 2021 when I saw that happen, and then we just sort of went from there.
So did you guys really trade, and there's no wrong answer to this, but did you guys trade a lot of NFTs before deciding to start an NFT project, or you guys kind of just saw like, this is really cool, this is something where like we want to start our own project versus like getting in and starting trading first and then starting a project?
I never really traded NFTs. I traded a lot of crypto, but with NFTs, I think what really got me into it, I forgot what the first project was that I bought into and like joined the community, but I think it was OK Bears that I was looking at and minting, but I didn't get whitelist, but like I was looking at the secondary, and then I saw the next day that like they pumped to like whatever, like 200 SOL, and then I was like, wow, okay, like I have to learn more about like what this space is about. So I picked up some project, I don't remember. I just like started chatting in the Discord, and I was like, this is really sick. Like I don't know who any of these people are in terms of like real life, but like I was just chatting to a lot of people, and I was like, this is really dope that you can build a community around your vision, around your project, and just kind of like see if you can fulfill that vision like together. And that whole idea of like working with your community was really sick. That's something that like sticks with me today. Like every time we go and like we talk to our community and like our holders, it's like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to do. What do you guys think of it? Like, what do you think we could do better? What do you think we could do differently? What can we work on? And like you get that constant feedback, and it's something really sick, which you don't really have traditionally. If you have investors backing you, you don't really have that feedback loop. And I think that's something really interesting about NFTs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, no doubt. So, okay, so let's go over the timeline real quick. So you got into NFTs in like August 2021. And then when did you guys start coming up with the idea for Fat Cats?
Pretty much right after. I remember we got together one night, and I was like, boys, like I have this idea. A lot of them, Aladdin, I think included, like was like, man, I have no idea what this is. Like, what is an NFT? And I started like, I didn't really necessarily know either, but I had been starting doing some research and I'd been like seeing how my friend was working on it. And I was talking to them about like, yo, this is a DAO. This is what it is. We create this, like we can have an idea and we can sell the project, like sell NFTs, stuff like this. And so I think like after that, it was probably around September when we had that first meeting, and then we wrote the first white paper, which was completely scrapped. And we continued working on it for about, I think it was almost like 5 months, 6 months, before we actually launched, because I think we went through like 20 different iterations of a white paper. We're learning everything on the go in terms of like how to market, how to stuff like that. And so I think it was around like 5 months until we launched. We launched in May of 2022. And so yeah, it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of meeting some really cool people. But yeah, it was a long pre-launch comparatively to some other projects. But I think at the end of the day, it sort of paid off with what we had in place.
So during that time period, so you guys kind of, so I'll make sure I'll sum it up. You guys tell me if I got it right.
Yeah.
So basically, Henny kind of learns about NFTs, kind of turns to you guys and says like, hey, we should start an NFT project. At first, you guys are kind of like, what the fuck's an NFT, right? So he's explaining some of this, and you guys kind of start formulating your idea for an NFT project of kind of what you guys think you could do for the ecosystem, right? And then during that, you guys basically take the beginning part of 2022 to formulate the idea of Fat Cats and everything like that. And then OK Bears launches and whatever that was, probably like, was that like April? Something along those lines, April or early May. And then you guys launched shortly after that. Yep. And so during that time period, from like, let's say the beginning of the year, January, to when you guys launched, what were you guys doing during that time? Because Henny, were you trading at that time, or were you guys mainly just focusing on coming up with ideas with Fat Cats?
Yeah, so I was trading a little bit. I wasn't necessarily trading. I think I'm a pretty bad trader, to be honest. Like I'd normally buy things and then just hold them because I don't know, I get an attachment and then forget to sell, and the next thing you know, they're either way down or I want to keep holding it.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, no, I was like I said, like the first one I bought was Solians. That was in August. I don't think they're worth anything anymore. Then the next one was Solana Monkey Rejects. Bought a couple of those. They had a crazy community at one point. Then tried to get into OK Bears, didn't. Ended up getting a couple Trippin' Apes. Got a Jaikan. What else? There's a bunch. But yeah, no, it's like during that whole time, we were pretty active within the ecosystem, but a lot of it was taken up by focusing on this project. And we weren't necessarily trying to focus too much like on what other projects were doing. Like there was like, probably like during the time that we were developing that roadmap, there was like 5 or 6 different metas that went through. There was like the super hype meta, there was like the first builders meta, and then there was the gambling meta, the big one, and then there was so many different things. And so like, we sort of tried to stay focused on this is what we're trying to do. We thought that our idea that we had was pretty good, and sort of just block out the noise. And yeah, at the end of the day, it turned into a builders meta again, I think about a week before we launched, and that helped us a little bit.
So, okay, so when you guys were like coming up with this idea, what was the original, like, I guess, because I always kind of wonder how everybody sees themselves fitting into the ecosystem, right? Like, what do you think that you're doing that is a net positive for the ecosystem? Like, why does Solana NFTs need another project, right? Because we have a shit ton of projects, and especially during that time, we had projects minting left and right. So what was your guys' thesis as to like, here's what we're building and here's why like Solana needs this?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. I mean, I still remember the very first day we were planning this project. We had it on the whiteboard. We had like our thesis, what we wanted to bring, and I think like almost all of that has been scrapped, so we completely moved away from it. But really, like initially, we wanted to we were thinking of ways that we could maximize value transfer to the holders, of course. So like we went through a lot of different like ideas, but what we eventually stuck on was this accelerator program. And so we always we were thinking when we were doing our initial like, you know, our marketing, our development of our website, we didn't have any guidance. We didn't really have a large network in the space because like we were just starting out. So we kind of needed that guidance. We never got it. So like as a new project, it is very tough to cement yourself, to grab attention, because like it is an attention economy. So like to grab people's attention and retain it, and then learn exactly how to like develop your project, what you should exactly offer is something which a lot of projects struggle with. So that's kind of why we wanted to start the accelerator, from our own experience, that we saw it was quite tough to launch your own project, even if you have, genuine intentions to want to start something legit. It's tough. So we have this idea for the accelerator where we leverage our network, our experiences, the people we know, the people on our Royal Council, which I'll speak on, and the different experiences we've had launching our own project, and then within the space to kind of help up and coming projects with their launches. So our Royal Council was composed of a bunch of builders who are very experienced and well versed in the space. I think it was some people from Blocksmith Labs like Kryptonint, Wasgun, Harmy, Spoonicus, from
Cybervillains.
Who else was it?
The Degen DAO, Jay Porter from Pesky Penguins, Rick from Soul Punks, Stockstill and Prez from Hydra. Who else? Saint Eclectic.
Carlos from
Jelly Babies, who was actually the first person who actually joined our Royal Council. Back when we had like 200 followers. He really I got to give him a shout out because he really supported us out of the very beginning.
And was the Royal Council people, if I'm correct on this, those were people who owned 30 of the NFTs, right?
No, so the Royal Council was something that we came up actually before Mint. And so when we came into the space, like Aladdin was talking about, we didn't have any connections. We didn't know anyone within the space to sort of help us and lead us in a way. And I remember the first Twitter space we did, it was myself and another founder. There's 2 people in there. One of them was my brother. And so we were like, what do we do? We thought that we were just going to come out and the next thing you know, people are going to be loving us and wanting to get in our project. But obviously that's not the case. And so what we realized is we needed to align ourselves with people and projects who were already well respected, who could give us that advice and also give us sort of credibility for other people who are looking to actually invest in us. Because if these people who are already well respected in the space are supporting them, there's no reason that other people shouldn't, if you're just an outsider. And so we came up with this idea for the Royal Council, and it was 10 people, like we said, and we brought them on gradually. Just through our connections, and with each one we grew, and they helped us a lot, pre-Mint and even now, being able to just be involved with them and see what they're doing and see how they've been successful so we can try and do the same.
That's interesting. So, okay, and what I was wrong on was that's the executive.
The executives, yeah.
So it's just called the executives if somebody has 30 of them. Okay, so we'll get into that in a bit. But the interesting part about this podcast episode is that you guys have been around for a minute. And, obviously, I've been doing this podcast now for a minute, so I've learned a ton in the last year, right? And I know a big part of what we wanted to talk about on this podcast today was what you guys learned, right? So even when I'm first hearing all of this, there's so many red flags right at the beginning. And I mean that in a positive way, in the sense of to me, it's important to learn from what were our fuck ups, right? So initially I hear basically you guys got into NFTs, but I wouldn't say either of you were super degenerate with it. I was minting like a motherfucker. So from basically September 2021 to, I'm still minting a ton, but I was minting everything. So I was minting probably 5 or 7 times a week. So nonstop, right? And so that's how I got into a lot of the bigger projects and whatnot, because I was minting everything. I also got rugged a trillion times, so some could argue maybe that wasn't the best strategy, right? But I did also learn kind of what works, what doesn't, because if you're minting every project, you're going to pick up certain tendencies of this works, this doesn't work, yada, 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 right? So then you guys start this NFT project, but you're going into it without really a huge knowledge base on what the community really needs. What does the NFT space need, right? Because I think it's difficult to go into something and go, if I go into the food and beverage industry, right? And I go, well, I don't know what the food and beverage industry needs, but I'm just going to come up with something. That's really fucking difficult to know, okay, this idea that I have is going to work, right? It's most likely not going to, because if you don't understand the industry, it's hard to know exactly what they're looking for, right? So now it feels like you guys are in a position where you guys had to learn from okay, we came into this maybe a little early, maybe probably should have spent another few months learning the space and everything like that. But regardless, you guys came in and you guys realized pretty much immediately we need to have this council of people who are there to kind of help guide us, because we recognize the fact that we're not ultra, deep into the space, and we need to learn a lot. So am I right on all of that so far?
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty close, yeah.
So, okay, so what were some of the biggest, wow moments of like, holy shit, like we probably should have realized this, or like what were some of the biggest like lessons right off rip that you guys realized?
Yeah. So the first one that I think of immediately, well, there have been a few. There have been a few fuck ups which we've learned a lot from, which we'll speak about. But the first one I think was how do I describe it? Like initially after Mint, we had these accelerator projects. So we took our time. We took our time to really make sure that the first one we come out with is going to be a banger. Is going to be like one which we vetted thoroughly. We ran through it with our royal council. It's one that we are very confident that it's going to be a banger. And so we took our time with that. I think maybe it was like a few weeks to a month before we like presented it to the community. So obviously like when you wait that long, in terms of community's perspective, you really expect that like this shit is going to blow my mind. It's going to be insane. And like, it's going to be worth the wait. And in our eyes, like it was for sure, because like we really took our time. We didn't want to come out with some half-assed project, which we got like 50, 60 applications. We got a lot of applications, but we really wanted to make sure that like we vetted all of them and that this one that we're going to come out with is going to do well. So we came out with 2 options and like we spoke to the teams, right? So like we've spoken to the teams. We know what their intentions are. We know like how like, you know, how like serious they're taking this and like where they can grow it to. But one of them, I don't want to mention the name, but like their art was very like hit or miss. And I know that like we ourselves had some like.
Are they still around?
No, I don't think they ever ended up launching.
Oh, then fucking name them.
Yeah.
Project called Dead Generates.
Okay.
Dead Generates, right? So like we were split on the art, but like we spoke to the team, like we really liked the team and like our council liked the team as well. So we came out with it and we came out with like a sneak peek of their art. And initially we just got destroyed. We got flooded so hard. Sent podcast to 0. This is a joke. Like, what the hell is this shit? Like, this is trash. This is a scam.
Everyone's like, what have you guys been doing for the last month?
Was
like,
the art just awful?
It was.
It wasn't. No, It wasn't that bad.
I didn't like it.
I liked it. I thought it was good. It was like these.
Do you still think it's good?
Yeah, it's the reason I thought it was good is because I was in Solana Monkey Rejects, and I really liked how they look. Like they're 3D, but I think they're cool. Like it's just my opinion, and obviously other people did as well because people sold out that collection and they were doing okay at the time. But obviously 3D collections are very hit or miss in the space, and so when we presented those 2 projects, we should have only presented 1, but we presented 2. One of them was solid, and we're still working with them now. Secret Space Society, and they're gonna be coming out soon. And then the other one was this Dead Generates project. And no one took the positive that, oh, this Secret Space Society is going to be a solid project. Everyone looked at the Dead Generates project and was like, what have you guys been doing? These guys are so bad. Like, it's been a month. Like, and we were like, oh my God. And then, yeah.
So we learned a few things from that. Like, I think first of all, we learned that like transparency, constant communication with your holders is very key. And that's something that we honestly like have struggled with over these last 9 months. And that's something which we really want to change. That's one of the reasons we came down to do the podcast. We want to be more transparent. We want to be having this open communication with our holders on a regular basis because I think that's extremely important. But 2, we also learned that like not to overflow with information. So we presented two projects and like one of them got completely like shadowed by the fact that everybody hated the other one. So like we learned that like we need to, you know, like kind of slowly release information over time rather than just like throwing it all at once, even if we've been working very hard on, you know, that release. It's not good. It's not a good idea to just bombard people with that kind of information because one, like attention is short within this space and like you really need to grasp the attention and retain it as well. So it's really important to like slowly release like whatever you're developing in terms of like milestones and like sprints because you don't want to overflow and then have nothing for the next like few weeks or something. So you need to have like constant feedback and constant like progression that you're showing.
Yeah, and you know, the way I look at this, and this is why I was excited to do this episode, because a lot of times when I'm having a project on, they're either one that's like already been successful, and so it's kind of like, all right, like we're talking more about like what they've done that's worked and things like that, or it's a project that's like brand new, so it's like we have no idea if this is going to work yet, like we'll see if it's going to, right? Or there's one where, like, to me, it's like they've been around for a minute, and so I'm always curious the lessons they learned, right? Because it's almost impossible to not, like, in the situation that you guys were in, the time that you guys minted, like, the experience that you guys had at that time, like, dude, if I knew you guys back then, I would have been like, buddy, there's no way you're not going to fuck up shit, right? Which is fine. To me, it's all about the fact that, A, you guys are still here. You guys are doing things. You guys are learning from everything. Like, to me, I think messing up in this is actually important to do, because if all you ever do at the beginning is succeed with everything, so if you had presented both those projects and they were both universally loved and everything like that, you guys would be praised like you guys are these NFT geniuses. But the reality of it is you guys were not that at the time, right? Like, there's still a lot that you had to learn. And so for me, you know, if I could give advice to anybody who's getting into the NFT space or whatever, it's, man, you really, really got to dive in and learn everything. Learn about what other projects are doing. And there used to be a meta of like, don't worry about what other projects are doing. Focus on you, focus on your project and things like that. I've always hated that, because to me, it's like, in what other industry do you not worry about your competition? You should always worry about your competition. It's not necessarily to say that like for them to succeed, we'll fail if they succeed. No, I don't believe that either. Or if we succeed, they're going to fail. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that this is a space where people are constantly innovating. So if you're paying attention to what other people are doing, A, you can learn a lot from the decisions they make and how the community accepts it, what the NFT space in general thinks of it. But then you can also figure out like, what are we missing? Like, what do we truly, truly need, right? Because I think there's a lot of times people launch a project and they're like, this is the problem that I'm fixing. And then everybody's sitting there being like, that's not a problem. Like, we're good there. We don't, and then that project doesn't do well, right? So you have to really, really think about like, what does the ecosystem truly need? And then that's going to change over time, right? So what we needed back in May is probably not what we need now, which is probably going to be different than May 2023, right? It's just constantly changing. And so to me, it's just really important to like learn things, adapt, and continue to grow. And so the fact that like you guys made mistakes at the beginning, to be honest, I'm glad you did, because it would be worse if you guys went in there and like automatically did great right off rip. You'd have an ego. You'd have, we can't mess up, like blah, blah, blah. Instead, you made mistakes. And some of my like favorite projects right now are projects that made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. It's just important to learn from those and things like that. So what I would ask you guys before we go even deeper into things, what is like, for you personally, what is the biggest thing that you feel like if you could go back in time, you would have done slightly different? Obviously, hindsight's always 20/20, but what's the biggest thing? And Henny, I want to start with you. What's the first thing that you would have done a little bit different if you could go back in time?
I think the biggest thing that we would have done is we would have looked for projects to accelerate before we actually minted. And I think if we were able to come out with a project that was quality right away at that time, we could have situated ourselves really well. And like, I think it would have really kicked things off, because like that time after you mint, those like couple weeks are very important. People want to see value being created right away, and people want to see their investment going up in value, obviously. And so I think what happened is, because we had such a large vetting process and such a long vetting process where it went through our Royal Council, it was voted on by our community, we had to vet them first. It took a lot of time to get through all the applications that we did get. And at the end of the day, I think if we had moved a little bit faster, we would have done better at this point now.
But do you think that like, let me think back about this. If you took, at that time, how could you have done better moving quicker? Because my only thing is, like, at that time, there was still obviously a lot that you guys had to learn. And so it was a high likelihood that, like, how do you vet a project if you don't know exactly what to look for yet?
Yeah, so that's actually, like, another reason why we brought on this Royal Council. All the projects that we were vetting, we presented and showed them to the Royal Council to get their thoughts on it as well. Like, we knew that we didn't know everything when we were coming into this. And that's why we brought on those people to give us like their advice. And so we would present a project to the Royal Council, and there's a couple like, oh yeah, no, we think this is good. Oh, maybe they can change this. I remember Spoon when he was with us, he even did like, he was doing like focus groups and stuff for us, which was huge. And like, to being able to give feedback like that. And so if we were able to sort of like present projects before and somehow get applications for these projects and see you guys are coming out, maybe we can accelerate you, stuff like that, before we actually minted and have them sort of ready to go right off the rip, that would have helped for sure. But like I said, like it's 2020, maybe you can't know that that's going to happen. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I definitely would have tried to do at that point.
And what about you?
Well, it's hard to say one thing, but I think what you're saying is very right about like you need to be constantly aware of your competition, not necessarily because you need to be doing better than them or need to be passing them, but because you need to be aware of how fast the space changes, because it's ridiculous how fast it changes. Like that's one of the main things. And so if we were more aware of that, I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with, even to this day, is our presence and our communication within the space in terms of like growing our brand, our personal brands, as well as the Fat Cats brand by constantly being present, by constantly networking and meeting new people in the space and like getting our vision out there. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your vision is or what your true intentions are if nobody or not enough people are aware of them and not enough people are there to, to get on board. So that's the main thing, that like if we were more aware of that and if we're aware of what everyone's doing, like for example, like D-Gods, they're constantly there. Frank is constantly there and always present. And that's something that we are really looking to kind of, improve on and do that more, because like that's something that which I think is massive. And I think if we were doing that, we wouldn't have made these kind of mistakes at the beginning, because we would have been more aware of what works in the space, what people like, what people don't like, and what to kind of avoid when launching right after mint.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely like the meta is shifted in terms of like what people expect from a founder now versus what they expected from a founder a year ago. Like it's definitely changed a ton. And so back then, like no one expected you to do things like podcasts and stuff like that. And now we've kind of since changed that. And I think for a lot of ways it's to humanize some of the projects so that people have like now when they see Fat Cats, like they see you guys and they're like, okay, cool. Now I know two of the guys who are behind the project. Like I know, I feel like I know them a little bit more, and inherently people are going to trust something that they feel like they can connect with a little bit deeper and whatnot. I think when it comes to the situation that you guys were in, and it's one of my I think gripes with accelerators, and not necessarily like a huge gripe, but it's something where I always get nervous about, like if you're doing something for somebody, right? Does that mean that they don't learn how to do that for themselves, right? And inherently what that worries me with is like, well, if we get to a point where like an accelerator is doing everything for a project, then is it really even what is their founder even doing at that point, right? And so are we just like spitting out projects that are super similar to one another? And that's one of my concerns, right? And so to me, I always look for, when it comes to founder, is this person somebody who really wants to dive into the NFT space and truly learn everything about it? And now I understand that back then, especially this is mid 2022, from basically like mid 2021 to mid 2022, I think pretty much like everybody was just minting shit and all of that. I think the expectation that I have now is that like if a founder comes into the space now, beginning of 2023, I expect them to know everything about what's going on in the NFT space. And there is no excuse to not know everything, because at this point, to me, anytime somebody comes in, there's liquidity that leaves the space. It's super important that we keep liquidity here, unless we're investing that once again into great projects, right? And so for that, I want to see that a founder comes in and they know everything. They're reaching out to everybody. They're already super well connected. That's why I get excited about projects like Easy's project, because I'm like, Easy knows the NFT space so well. And so then when he's getting ready to release Bodega, it's like that's something where it's like people already know him. He knows the space. He knows what people are looking for. And so I feel like he's somebody that I want to bet on, because if anybody knows how to succeed, it's going to be somebody who's been here and is super vocal in the space, right? And so I feel like as you guys are getting further into this and as you guys are working with other projects and things like that, man, it's like keep looking for the people who actually are spending the time. They're, deep into Twitter spaces. They really want to do something that's going to benefit the ecosystem. Because to me, if you can't answer the question of why your project is needed in the ecosystem, you're probably going to go to zero, So it's, but with that, so I want to go into, so you guys announce these two projects to your community. Community has a adverse reaction to one, and it accepts the other. So the other project, SSS, what's that stand for again?
Secret Space Society.
Okay, so Secret Space Society. So what happened with that? Because that was back in you're saying June?
Yeah. So yeah, that was obviously a lot of crazy stuff has happened over the last year. And so basically we got with them right at the beginning when they were starting their project. They didn't really have anything. We helped them make their art. They had an idea that we really liked. They were actually going to be one of the first on-chain sports books in Solana. This was before the gambling meta. This was before all of that. And so we were like, yeah, this can be a great idea. They'd been doing it already. They'd been doing quite a lot of like sports betting like calls and stuff like in their server. They had like an existing collection of like very small amount. I think it was around like 500, where it's just like a tight knit community of these like sports betting people. And so we saw a lot of potential there, and the founders were super dope guys. I thought that they had like a really good idea. And so we started working with them, like full development. And obviously it takes a while to get a project like fully off the ground, getting their website made, getting the art made, all of that. And we were right about to launch them. They were getting really good traction. We were doing super well. And then was it the 0% royalties happen? Or was it? It was right before. I think it was the 0% royalties.
And then FTX.
And then FTX.
It was really bad timing. But yeah, they were very solid. We had a lot of traction going for them, and like things were looking great. Same with our other project that we launched. They launched, I think, a day after the zero royalties happened. So it was really bad timing. Like the launch was planned on that day, and then the royalties happened, and like.
And so it got to the point where there was no minting, and so then we basically came to them and we were like, "Hey guys, maybe we should just like regroup. I don't think this is the best time to mint." Just because of everything going on in the ecosystem. And so then it was sort of just, we put it on hold for, I don't know, it's been about like probably 3-4 months now. And so now that we're seeing a little bit of life coming back into the ecosystem and stuff like that, we're working on them because obviously like a sports book isn't an original idea anymore. Now we're working with them to create something new that's going to be super dope for the ecosystem. We think it's gonna be super cool. It's not like fully finalized yet, but we're working on like the full rebrand with them. Working on getting them back out there, getting them back on the trail, and hopefully we can launch them sometime in the next 1 or 2 months.
I'm glad to hear you guys are going back to the drawing board, because I do feel like one of the biggest things is with this is that like I used to ask when I started this podcast, I would say to somebody like, where do you want to see yourself in a year, you know? And now I'm like, dude, where are you going to be in like 3 months, right? Because this space moves so quick, right?
So fast, yeah.
So where you think you're going to be in a year, like who the hell knows? We have no idea where the crypto space is going to be, where the NFT space is going to be, where the overall like world markets are going to be in a year. We have no clue, right? Now, there's always going to be people who succeed during all of this, right? Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing to me is like, what are you doing taking like the new information, the new meta, and like what are you doing that's different, right? Because right now there is a huge gambling meta, right? Oh, yeah. But then if you have 50 billion books, it's not going to work where, you know, you're going to see all of them be successful. We definitely don't have enough people in the NFT space to be able to accept all of those, right? And so for me, it's really, really important to see how people kind of navigate that. And that goes back to the more time you spend in the space, the more you're able to recognize, like, what do we need? What is it that, like, what's the space really missing? And then once you figure that out, dude, then you've got your, you know, crazy good idea, right? It's just for a lot of people, I feel like they look at it and they're like, it's almost like when you're putting together IKEA furniture, right? And the person's just like, I'm going to make this shit fit. And they're just hammering the fuck out of it. And then it looks terrible when it's done, right? Yeah. But if you take your time and you find the right fit and you actually look at the instructions, I've learned the hard way sometimes with that. But when you actually take the time and go through it and you actually put it together the right way, it fits in perfectly and it does really well, right? Same thing with NFTs. Like, you just have to really find where that niche is, like what's missing, what we need. And that's where I say, you know, when you guys are talking to the founders of these projects, like, really looking for the people who actually want to find that solution, not where you guys are giving it to them, but where they're looking for it and recognizing, hey, what we thought we were originally going to do damn near a year ago at this point is not what's going to work now. So we need to continue to pivot. We need to really think about what the space needs now. And then even when we launch that idea, we may have to pivot at some point right after that. Like, that's the name of the game in this space, is just being able to pivot, being able to move, things like that, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, it was a very, very hard decision to put it on pause, but like, we're both very glad that we did it, because at the end of the day, like, it's better for them to wait and launch when we have a better value proposition, and like to make sure that they do extremely well, which we know they can, then launch and like force a mint just for the sake of it and not have it go so well. Because like, at the end of the day, like, we want to have to do the very best for our projects, and like, even if that means pushing the mint back, like, so be it.
So how have you guys kept your community afloat from basically, because all of that was happening in like June, and I know obviously there's been a lot that's happened in the NFT space between June and now, but how have you guys kept the I guess, like, so you guys basically, if I have it correct, you guys had this idea for this accelerator program, basically when you start Fat Cats, right? And so I guess, how did the idea like shift? Because you guys announced these two projects, and then one of them actually minted?
So yeah, those were the first two projects, the Degenerates and SSS. And then we started working with SSS first, and then we started working on a project called Conductors, and then also working with a project called Kitsunex. And Conductors minted probably about like 3 months ago. And like Aladdin said, it was obviously like they were doing very well, and then there's the market really just went down, and then it hurt them. And so that was like, we saw that and we were like, damn, like obviously going to wait for these next two. And now currently we're working with SSS and Kitsune, but they were, from our like point, it was sort of like on pause for the last like 3 months. They were both like still like going, and Kitsune especially was doing very well in terms of like keeping themselves relevant and really continuing like being on their grind. But we were just like, guys, like we can't mint right now because it's going to hurt you guys in the long run, and we need to be able to sell you guys out in order for you guys to be successful in the long run, because I know that you guys both can. And so over that time, we were sort of like, not necessarily lost, but we were sort of trying to come up with like what the next value proposition for Fat Cats was going to be. And it took a little bit, and it took a lot of thinking from our end to figure that out. And now I think we've gotten to a point where we know what that's going to be. We were lucky because a lot of our holders have had faith in us for a long time, and we're very like blunt with them, talking like, guys, like this market right now is not very accepting of what we're doing in terms of the accelerator, just because it's hard to sell out projects. And we were very blunt with them. We told them this is what we're doing, but we're going to come back with something even better. And they understood. The majority of them did, and I think that it shows a testament to our community, because they put their trust in us to sort of follow through on what we're say that we're going to be doing, even if it's not what they bought into in the first place. And so we came up with this executives, the Fat Cats 2, as well as something that we haven't fully released yet, which maybe we'll talk about in a bit, in terms of being able to grow the Fat Cats brand first, and then bringing on all the utilities and the value propositions for holders after. And over these last like 1-2 months, when we've been like really thinking and really brainstorming what we're going to do with it, I think we've come up with a pretty good plan. And we're pretty excited to really start rolling it out, especially with this art upgrade that we have coming here.
So what do you think is the biggest reason right now why somebody should be, I guess, like excited about Fat Cats? Because if somebody's sitting there being like, okay, they have this accelerator that they're doing, and okay, like the accelerator hasn't, really worked super well, right? In terms of like the projects that have come out, haven't done ultra well, regardless of the timing of the market, which I know is stuff that's outside of our control, but that's also something where like the next project you come out with, like there could be something. Everybody's been dealing with stuff like that, right? So, there's always that concern of like, okay, whether a project does well, whether a project doesn't do well, regardless, there has to be a benefit to your holders, right? And so how do you guys interpret, like, how do we make our holders happy during all of that? Like, how do you, I guess, like make sure your holders are happy while you're figuring out like the accelerator, and we'll get into the launch pad and everything like that. But yeah, tell me more about how you, figure out making your holders happy.
Speak on to that first. I just want to say like one thing, like, which relates to this, is that we've learned is that since we initially came out as this like utility project, and we're going to offer this accelerator so that the holders can get these mints, and that's where they can get this tangible value from being a part of Fat Cats, we've kind of learned that while that's extremely important and that those tangible benefits are extremely important, they can somewhat limit some projects depending on what they do, like utility projects, based on how well they can do, because they're always going to be tied to what that dollar return can be in terms of these mints, for example.
100%.
Yeah. So what we've learned more is that like those tangible benefits are extremely important, but we can kind of shift away from that in the way that we want to create our brand and community to be something that people are extremely excited to be a part of, in the fact that they're going to be like a part of doing incredibly exciting things, not just like minting these projects. And that's all that Fat Cats can be attributed to. We want to make it so that you can be a part of Fat Cats and experience all these cool things that we're offering, as well as mint. So we'll get into what Fat Cats 2 is and how that relates to this vision. But that's something which we really learned, and like something which really, I think, hindered us, because we were always looked at as this accelerator, and I want to buy into Fat Cats because I can get this return from this many mints. But that really is hindered because that's heavily dependent on the market, which we've seen. And like that, if that doesn't work out, then we're in a very tough spot, because that's really all that we're looking to offer our holders. So that's why we're shifting away from Fat Cats to Fat Cats 2. And I think Henry can speak on what our vision is with that.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've sort of realized in the last 9 months since we've been doing this project. We were so focused on, this is what we're going to do with the accelerator. We want to do it as well as possible. And in doing that, it couples the value of our NFT to how the accelerator is doing. I think the main value proposition of NFT projects, what they should be, is you want to be a part of that project because of the community involved. And actually, even last night, I really realized that with this youth meetup that we went to, there was 40 people there. And they were all brought together because they either held a DGOT or a Ute, or they were in Web3. And it really, the ability to create that community from absolute strangers is crazy. And we want to be able to do that by providing value to our holders. And also just making it so people want to hold a Fat Cat because they want to be a part of the Fat Cats Capital Club, of the Capital Club itself. And so with our new vision and with Fat Cats 2 especially, and then the eventual Capital Club, which is going to be coming, and with our acquisition of Ape16Z, we have our community, which is almost twice as large with that acquisition now. We have our new art coming. We have a new plan in place to be able to consistently provide value to the holders apart from the accelerator. And with that, it comes with us, myself and Aladdin, being more public and being more active, getting our community more active, because we want people, similar to how DGODS does it and similar to how Frank is everywhere, and people want to be a part of that community. We want people to think the same way as Fat Cats. And when people join our community, we want the accelerator and we want all the other things that we do offer to sort of just be icing on the cake. You want to be a Fat Cat because you want to be a part of the Fat Cats Capital Club, but you get all this stuff as well when you do join.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think, a lot of it is when you tie yourself to the success of other projects, it's always difficult because you never completely know, are those projects going to be crazy successful, right? And this is the NFT space where probably 95% of projects fail. So it's a very difficult thing of if you don't have that success quickly, you're going to send your own project to zero as a result, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to figure out how do we get people to genuinely give a shit about what we're doing, right? And so we've been chatting, off the podcast about some of the ideas and things that you guys have coming, and one of the big focuses is trying to figure out, kind of what to do, not necessarily that you guys don't have this figured out yet, but in terms of you guys have just acquired Ape16Z, right? So let's talk about that for a second. So what exactly was your guys' thought process behind acquiring Ape16Z, and what made you excited about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was pretty recent. About 2 weeks ago, we acquired Ape16Z, and I think sort of what happened is DK, one of the founders of Ape16Z, hit me up and he made the offer for us to acquire them. And honestly, I think what they made with Ape16Z was something that could have been super successful. It's just how it went with the mint and all of that. It ended up hindering them, and he thought that it would be better if we were able to sort of fulfill the vision that Ape16Z had, because we were a very similar project to what they were trying to do. And it sort of made sense for us to take them over as in that merger acquisition. With that, we got a launchpad, which I think could be one of the best in the space, audited by OtterSec, which I don't think any other launchpads have been. Minting experience, I minted one of the apes, super smooth. We got that. We got some of their deal flow in terms of projects that we're looking to launch with them. We got a website that we're currently working on rebranding to the new Capital Club website, as well as the community that came with it. And some people, I think of by expanding your collection size with a new community, it can hinder you. But I think it's almost the exact opposite. And so now we've merged the whole Ape16Z community into the Fat Cats Capital community. They're in our Discord. They can stake their apes currently for catnip, and we're trying to integrate them into our ecosystem as much as possible. What that does, I think, rather than quote unquote diluting the supply and people getting scared that maybe the value of the NFTs will drop, it gives you another 4,000 voices of people, which is their supply, I think around probably 1,000 holders, it gives you another 1,000 people who are gonna hopefully support what you're trying to do. And I think that's why we see these large collections doing so well, because they have so many people looking to support what the project is doing. And so now in this new road for Fat Cats and Fat Cats 2 and in the creation of the Capital Club, we're going to be able to merge the communities together and have them under this one umbrella where we're able to grow together and really create some pretty cool stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I look at when I first got into the NFT space, I would see all these projects doing these 10K collections, right? And at first I hated it because I was like, well, actually, I take that back. At first I loved it, right? Because I was like, cool, more opportunity for me to mint, things like that. Then as time went on, I was like, well, shit, there's like not enough people in the NFT space to really like to have this many 10K collections, right? Because there was a ton of 10Ks, right? Yep. And then we've seen with Yuga, like Yuga Labs has done a lot of like larger collections. I think they have to have the largest collections in the NFT space. Oh, yeah. And I think as a result, what that can do as a positive is that if you can align everybody, if you can align the community to have the same thought process in terms of like they're supportive of what you guys are building, they're supportive of you two. And that's why like getting to know you two is incredibly important, is that you then have essentially, depending on the size of the community, let's say it's 10K here, you have 10K people who are looking to support you guys and are looking to basically like spread the word about what you guys are building, right? And we've seen this. It's actually really interesting when you think about like the sewer pass for Yuga Labs in the last few weeks, is that when the sewer pass came out, the floor price, I want to say, was at like 1 point something sold. Then it dropped down to like might have been like 0.9, maybe not even that low. It might have only gone to like 1 soul. But regardless, a lot of people at that point were selling it, fudding it, whatever. Then you started to see people playing the game, and the floor price has gone up accordingly as a result, right? Because now you have all these people who are sharing their recording of themselves playing the game, right? Well, that is social engineering at its absolute finest, is that everywhere you look on Twitter, at least for me right now, everywhere I look on Twitter, I'm seeing people playing the game, right? And so as a result of that, you get free marketing, right? It's the easiest thing in the world. So when you guys are doing it, if you guys are doing a 10K collection or a 5K collection or a 20K collection, to me, it's about, are you able to get all of those holders aligned in the thought processes of like wanting to support you guys, talking about what you guys are building, and then also getting them to suggest ideas. I go back to, there's not a project in this world that has every idea. Like, the best thing that you can do is get your community where they truly like support you guys and they want to have these conversations and they want to suggest ideas. I think some of the best projects that have been around for a year plus now are projects where they took community members and they elevated them to higher positions because they heard, even the good, bad, and the ugly, right? Not just hearing, oh, we love you guys, but the people who are like, you know what, hey, fuck you both, right? Those people are my favorite people because those people care, right? And when someone cares, to me, that is the best thing that you can do. Is like, if somebody DM me and they were like, bro, your podcast is hot trash, right? I'd be like, yo, here's my number. Let's get on a phone call. I want to hear why, right? Because if you care enough to message me and be like, your podcast is hot trash, there must be something I'm doing wrong. Like, let's talk about it. Like, I want to know where your head's at, right? So if somebody's looking at you guys and they're like, yo, I think you guys are messing up, obviously they've got bags into you guys. Like, they want to see you guys succeed, right? So even if they're frustrated, even if they say some mean shit, right? It's because you know that they care. And so that, to me, is such a powerful emotion, because I can't remember which one of you guys mentioned it, but like when you think about like the traditional startup, you don't get that kind of that feedback loop, right? And so this is something where, if you launch something on like Amazon or whatever, like, you might hear somebody in like an Amazon review just kind of be like, this product's trash, whatever, but you don't really have any ability to really connect with that person, right? This is something where you can actually give that, say, hey, let's go into a voice chat, or hey, here's my, Telegram, let's get on a phone call, or hey, here's my flipping number, let's get on a phone call, right? That, to me, is such a powerful thing, because then if you're doing that with, if you're talking with community members on a regular basis, you're going to develop this group of people that really, really supports you guys, believes in you guys, so that you guys have the time to figure it out. Because to me, the thing I hate about the NFT space is, my one big gripe with it is, like, we give people like like a chance and a half. We're like, all right, you gotta nail this right off rip. But there's very few businesses in general that start up and immediately know what they're doing and immediately succeed. And so to me, I want to see people get a larger opportunity to succeed. I want to see people actually give them the time to really build something and things like that, right? Now, the nice part is in the market that we're in right now, everybody's kind of a long-term holder now because we don't really have much of a choice. We're here for the long term. We got to be, right? When you're in a bear or in a bull market, like people are taking profits and they're getting huge W's right off rip. This is a little bit more difficult. People have to grind towards success, right? So for me, the people that are here right now are the people that really want this to succeed, right? Because they're here during the ugly, right? And those are my favorite kind of people. So when you guys are connecting with those people, you're having those conversations, that's what's going to lead to the ideas that really blow up Fat Cats, right? So to me, it's just so important to have those conversations because there's always a limitation, and you're also always going to be slightly blinded by like your perspective on the project, right? When you have somebody who's coming in from a completely different perspective, they're able to look at it a little bit differently, offer different ideas, and I think that's where we get the best ideas possible in creating that kind of community where you guys are really able to, chat with them, get to know them, have these hard conversations. That's what leads to the, idea that really, the next podcast episode, we're like, hey, Ford Price is at 30 SOL, like, and here's why, right? Yeah. Because these ideas that we generated with talking to our community.
I'm so happy you said that because like that's one of the biggest things, and that's the first step we're taking towards moving towards that kind of mindset and that kind of like engagement with our community is like things like these podcasts, where we come on, we dox ourselves, we show ourselves, like we show the community like we're here and we're doing everything we can to make this successful, and we want you to be with us, ride with us, and do the exact same. And we want as much feedback as possible. Like also with these apes, that's another 1,000 members into our community telling us like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, this is completely terrible. Or like, this is a good idea. Like maybe we should stick with this. And like, that's kind of really the main point for this acquisition, not just the launchpad, but also to have these new holders, which we're going to be able to leverage when we move into Fat Cats 2. And kind of with this whole upgrade experience, it's not just going to be an upgrade for the Fat Cats. And we're going to talk about that now, but we want to make it so that like our two communities really like become one, and we can have one larger base where we can leverage them to kind of really spread the influence of Fat Cats and what we're trying to do. And so that's the main thing with Fat Cats 2, to grow our influence within this space. This is the first step. The upgrade will be the next step. And then from there, there's a lot more we can talk about after that. But these are the main steps we're taking now. And I think that's going to be really helpful for us in the future.
Okay. So let's talk about the art and the upgrade and everything like that. So you guys obviously had the art you originally came out with Fat Cats. Talk about like, I guess, why you guys decided that you needed to upgrade and what you're looking to achieve with that.
So with the upgrade, the main thing we want to achieve is kind of to shift the perception that people have with Fat Cats. So that's related to what I said before about moving away from more utility-based kind of project where we're evaluated based on how much we can provide tangibly in terms of dollars to our community, but more towards this kind of community of influence and reach within the space. So that's where we want to upgrade, because right now the perception is more like a kind of utility project with this kind of cute-based art, which I think we want to move away from and kind of show like that we have the art resonating with what our values are and what our vision is. So like, I think the art is very important, not just because of like the aesthetic, but also because like when the holders look at the art, they should have some sort of resonation with what the project wants to do and what they want to achieve. So
yeah, like we want people to feel like proud to rep a Fat Cat like as their PFP. Like when Aladdin says like resonate, it's like people like a D-God, for example. People buy a D-God that they think looks like them, or they think it's like because it has like a human aspect. People are like, this is my virtual persona, and this is, I want to be known as this, and people are proud to have a D-God as their PFP. Obviously, we're not at that point yet, but with this new art especially, it's important for people to have like a connection to the art that they hold and want to show people that this is who I'm supporting. These are the Fat Cats. This is whoever, like, who I am in this Web3 persona of me.
So what I would recommend to you guys then is that when you guys are, as you guys are going through the art previews, then really make sure you're having one-on-one conversations with people where you ask them their true, honest feedback, right? Because I think one of the issues sometimes is that you get people in an echo chamber, right? So you have this big group of people together, they're all giving their viewpoints, and sometimes you're almost incentivized to feel like, well, I don't want to be the outcast that's like, I don't like that, right? So I always prefer those one-on-one conversations where somebody can be like, hey, I really love that, or hey, that is trash, right? and it's good to learn from that because, I think like I remember when Frank first had me come over and look at like how Utes had like how the whole process had gone from Duppies to Utes and then from like one collection to the next. So they, I believe, put together, it was something like 9 collections of 15,000. Truly like 9 whole collections, right? Wow. And it was crazy seeing all the art and everything like that. But the final version of what they came out with was exponentially better from the beginning. I mean, like mind-blowingly better, right? And so, the thing is with that art process is like really it's creating that thing where your community really does want to rep it, because even like my DGod right now is my PFP. I can't change it. Like I truly can't. It is now far more than just an NFT to me. It is my digital representation on Twitter, which now will get me access to certain things just because of the fact that I have that as my PFP.
And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just because you think the art looks great, right? It's because you resonate.
No, to be honest, I don't even fuck with it. Like when I say that, I love but my DGod looks nothing like me. Like my DGod has bleach blonde hair and a full beard. Like I literally look nothing like my guy. I do love the hell background and things like that, but in terms of like the look of my guy, we have literally zero similarities. But it's now been something where it's been my PFP on Twitter since October 2021, right? So it's been my PFP for a long time. And the reason why I originally made it my PFP was not the floor price, because the floor price wasn't shit. It was, I loved the mantra behind DGods. I loved what they had to say. I loved the kind of the badass nature that they had and the kind of like, we're going to figure this the fuck out. And then I liked the fact that when they made mistakes, they owned it, And so that to me was something that I had such high respect for. Because to me, like, I love the mindset of like, hey, I'm not afraid to make a mistake, but when I make one, I'm going to own it, and we're just going to continue going. Like, no matter what, we're just going to keep going, right? Yeah. And I love that mindset, and that was something that I really resonated with. And then obviously, as like the upgrade from the original DGod art to the Dead God art, like obviously exponentially better, right? Yeah. But even where I'm at right now, I remember even before Frank mentioned like season 3 art, I remember just being like, I mean, I'm kind of used to the art now. Now I kind of want something different, right? Yeah. And now they're getting ready to come up with season 3 art, right? And that to me, I know I'm gonna love that when I see that. And after a time period, I'm gonna be like, I'm ready for season 4, right? And it's just, that's just how it goes. It's keeping things fresh, right? It's the same reason why we go shopping for new clothes, because we want to keep shit fresh. Same reason why people who live in the same apartment over time they redo it and they put couch in a different place, or they put this different wall decorations up. We want to keep things fresh, right? And so that to me is a really important thing, and I love projects that don't just stay stagnant. They just keep moving, So even if you guys are doing something right now and somebody's like, oh, I don't really like that, that's fine. If you just keep moving, eventually they're going to have that thing that they love, right? And you guys are going to figure out what works, right? It's just that process of just, continually evolution. So then I want to talk about from there. And I know a lot of this, like, I didn't want this episode to be something where like we get into a lot of like the nitty gritty details of like what's coming next. And I know like your holders probably want some of those answers, but I wanted them to really get to know you guys and like what like you guys are, what you guys have learned in this process, because it has been something where you can never go back and like change the past, right? Like if I could go back, I would have said to you guys, hey, you know what? You guys take more time, really get to know the space, and then launch what you guys are doing, right? But also, I don't know if a year ago I would have known to give you that advice, right? I know to give you guys that advice now because I've met a shit ton of founders. I've had a lot of conversations, but we're constantly evolving with it, right? So I give you guys a lot of credit for being here today and having these conversations and things like that. I want to know from you guys, like, what are some of the goals that you guys have for yourself and then also for the project in the next like 6 months to a year, just in terms of like, doesn't have to be like a specific goal, but more of just like, what do you want? What will you view as a success for yourself and then also for the project?
You want to go? I got it.
I'll go after you.
I think a goal for myself and something that I've really realized that I want to do is really grow like my personal brand. As well as the project's brand itself. In terms of my personal brand, like right now, because I've been so focused on like doing stuff behind the scenes and haven't been in enough Twitter spaces, stuff like that, I think my personal Twitter has like 600 followers. I want to get that up, and so people know who I am. When I'm trying to join a Twitter space, I want people to be like, oh, it's Henny, he's the founder of Fat Cats, let's get him up here, I want to hear what he has to say. And that just comes with being a lot more active within the space. And that's something that we're 100% going to be working on. I want to be known as I'm the founder of Fat Cats Capital. And I want people to know and respect me for it, because I want Fat Cats to become something that is a respectable project within the space. And I want that to be connected to myself, because we're going to be the ones who are doing it. I think that's probably the biggest one.
So for me, yeah, I mean, mine is a bit similar, and we were speaking about it before. I think I want to just become much more open and much more like involved within the space. And whether that starts with what I'm doing now, is coming out as being dogs, doing some of these podcasts, or it's just like joining these spaces, interacting more with our holders, you know, calling them up even and like asking them, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Like, this is what we're thinking of doing. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think we should not do that? Like, I just want to become much more involved and much more present in terms of like who I am and owning that within the space, rather than just like the founder that's kind of working more in the background and like behind the scenes, because I think that's like something that I struggled with before, because it's like you can get so focused on what you're trying to provide to the holders and like what you want to build that you kind of lose sight of what exactly an NFT project should be, where you have that loop with your holders and you have that relationship. So that's something that I think like I lost sight of, and I really want to fix that. And I'm glad that I can start by doing that on the podcast. So that's personally. In terms of Fat Cats, I think our next step is the upgrade, of course. And I think we want with that to really break the internet or Twitter as much as possible. So leveraging our ape holders, leveraging our current holders, but also like the entire experience. We've had some ideas. I don't want to say too much about it because there's nothing set in stone, but really like it's going to be the way that we plan it. It's going to be very, very hard to not upgrade. And I think we're going to integrate, you know, a bunch of different game theory mechanisms, and also like just kind of playing on what we have available. So we have like the dead fish. I don't know if we've spoken about that. We have our existing Fat Cats collection. We have the apes, and we have plants as well. So what I'm thinking of is like kind of like combination of all of those in relation to also like different game theory mechanics, which we can use to really make this experience as best as possible for our holders. So like that's the first thing. And then also, of course, in terms of a tangible goal, I think we want to be at like at least 30 plus soul floor, depending on what the value
50.
of soul is, of course. All right.
100.
Well, ideally the sky is the limit, but we want to start with like, you know, 10 first, then 30. And then of course, like, because really, like, I know people speak about the floor like it's not important, but we do like really care, because that is essentially the metric of success for any project. So that is the main thing, to get that shit up as much as possible, doing whatever it takes to do that.
And the thing is with that, so what is the what's your all-time high?
8.
Okay. So yeah, you guys got to give yourself that tangible goal of 10, right? Like that to me is like, that's a really easy goal to obtain, right? 10 is not that crazy, right? And I think with that, the way that you guys have to think about that is the more the community knows you guys, accepts you guys, hears from you guys, the more likely they are to like, I won't name projects, but there are projects I've floored over the last year because I've reached out to them and haven't been able to get a hold of them. And I'm like, dude, it is something where like, when I'm trying to give you ideas, at least at a minimum level, just say to me, hey, I appreciate your feedback. Like I'm going to like take that into consideration, you know, blah, blah, right? At minimum, give me that, right? But like when I get ignored, it's frustrating, because once again, it goes back to that whole mindset of like, I care. I want to see this project succeed. That's why I'm giving my that's why I'm giving my advice, right? That doesn't mean my advice is always going to work, but I want to at least know that I'm heard, right? And so that's, I think, from a personal level, how a lot of people in the space feel, right? And so, you know, I think both of you guys had great goals there. I think the personal brand is important, right? Because I think getting Fat Cats to the point where somebody rocking the PFP is something that is respected is an important thing. That is one of the biggest indicators of success in the space, is that when you're rocking a certain PFP and people recognize it and they have respect for it, that's a huge thing to obtain, right? But a lot of that comes from your guys' guidance, right? Like, are you guys making it where your holders, one, want to rock it, right? And two, where like when a Twitter space is going on, are you guys actively contributing to that space? You know, when it's not talking about you guys, but when it's just talking about the NFT space in general, why are you bullish on NFTs? Why are you like whatever, no matter what the topic is, right? And so I try to go in Twitter spaces that are like 20 people in them. I try to go in some that are like 100 people, some that are 1,000. And if I truly feel like I have something to speak up on, I'll request up and try to go up there. But regardless, I'm always trying to just show that like, I know what I'm doing, because if people respect my takes on that, they're more likely to listen to my podcast, right? And so and then you guys are more likely to be like, okay, yeah, I want to hear Marc's advice. Like, I want to have that conversation off the podcast where we can really get into like everything, right? Because that's the downside with some of this is like we can't like say everything because we want to like, there's obviously some things that need to be released at certain times and things like that. But I love being able to just shoot the shit with people, offer up my ideas because I want to see people succeed, right? And I've enjoyed getting to know you guys the last 2 days, and it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to your guys' success. But I think both of you guys have great goals. I think getting into the Twitter spaces, having those conversations is really important for people to respect Fat Cats and everything that you guys are as founders, and even getting your like other people who are in your community to do the same. Like, that's important. Getting them excited to want to speak up in Twitter spaces, like, that's a great thing. Having like your community members become like reply guys is good shit. Like, that is, dude, anytime anybody replies with some like great stuff, I'm always following them back because I'm just like, yeah, like, I appreciate people who add positive comments to the space, people who offer up constructive criticism, people who are just like, putting actual thought into things. I respect those kind of people, right?
And then it all starts with the founders, right? Exactly. Yeah. So like, that's really where we're trying to lead, not by example, but like lead first by like being more vocal, being more present within this space, and also just like connecting more with not just the community, but like everybody, not even our holders, but just like people within the NFT space. Cause really it's not that big.
Yeah, 100%.
At least not yet.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're already over an hour. See, this is how quickly this goes by. Oh, yeah. So I want to hear from you guys. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about that we haven't already chatted about? And if not, I've got like a few final questions. But is there anything that you guys want to chat about that we haven't really said?
I think something like that I just sort of want to put out there and really like show, first off, like my appreciation for, and just like the project's appreciation for, like our holders that have like been with us now since the very beginning and have actually like put in the effort to offer up ideas to us, to give us the criticisms where we need it, to really want to see us succeed and really believe in us. A couple names that like really come to mind. Dynamics. He's someone who approached us at the beginning, right when we launched, like 1 or 2 days after, and he just messaged me and he was like, "Hey man, like I love the idea for the project. Would love to see if there's any way that I can come on board to help." And he started as like an accelerator liaison. He basically came to us and he was like, "I like the idea. I had the similar idea, but I want to be able to work with you guys." And he helped us quite a bit in terms of these accelerator projects that we're working on. It graduated from that to now he's a member of our Royal Council and we work with him almost every day. And he has been someone who I think has been able to give us like an outside perspective and insight and a lot of really good ideas for what we're creating. And I think without him, he provides a lot of value to us. So I just want to give him a shout out there because we do appreciate it. It goes back to what you were
saying before about needing people outside that like echo chamber, right? Is what you described it as, like to come and be like, this is just not going to work, or this is going to work, or like this is what I think. It might be different to what you guys are thinking, but like if you're kind of like just asking the same people who kind of have the similar views or just don't want to challenge you on your views, then you really don't get anywhere. You don't learn anything and you don't challenge those norms that you would usually go by. So like that's been really helpful with him. And like definitely he's a huge help, and he's going to be a huge help going forward into this new chapter of Fat Cats too.
There we go. No, I love that. And so, is there anything that you guys want to drop alpha-wise in terms of like, or just speak to your holders in general, or prospective buyers or anything like that? What should people be excited about with Fat Cats?
I think the biggest thing to look out is for what we're planning on doing with the Capital Club itself. Right now, we're known as Fat Cats Capital and Ape 16Z. Those are our two projects. We want to merge them all into one. And with that, we want to be able to provide our holders value way beyond, like sort of what we were talking about, way beyond the accelerator itself. We're looking into and are creating some insane community management software that we're looking to couple with the accelerator as an added benefit for projects that do launch with us. We realize that right now there's 100 accelerators or 100 launch pads out there. Like there's no reason for really anyone to pick us over anyone else, regardless of if our tech is better or not. We need to make it, and we will make it, so that we have these accelerator services that we offer pre-mint, and we have this launch pad that we're looking to offer at a very affordable fee compared to everything else out there. But we also have this other stuff that we can plug you into right away after mint. And it's going to be, there'll be the classic staking and raffles and all that stuff. But on top of that, there's also going to be some things that haven't been seen before in the space. And I think it's going to be something that's going to make quite a bit of noise. And it's also going to provide a lot of value for the projects that we are launching through our accelerator. And will hopefully lead to a lot more projects actually being launched by us and us being able to provide more value to our holders in turn. Because as we make more money through this launchpad that we're doing, it just gives us a way more ability to actually do stuff that will benefit our project and our holders in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think being sustainable is a very important aspect of things, and like that is something that we talked a lot about a year ago, which was like, do projects actually have additional revenue streams and things like that? So I think the Launchpad makes great sense for that. But yeah, and is there anything you wanted to add onto that?
Yeah, I want to speak mostly just on, I think that the rebrand is extremely exciting, and I think we're gonna do everything in our power and beyond to make sure that we make as much noise as possible about this new Fat Cats rebrand into the Capital Club, and also the kind of integration of apes into our ecosystem, and just make that upgrade experience as great as possible and make as much noise as possible. That's really the main goal for that, and to grab as many people's attention as possible and spread the influence and the brand of Fat Cat. So that's what we're really focusing on now, as well as, of course, this platform and developing that software. But the noise is extremely important because, we've been around like for a while now, and I think we need to really work on gathering attention and retaining it, and that's really what we're going to do with this upgrade. So we should look forward to that. Other than that, like, I agree with what Henry was saying. I think like this software should be really interesting because we really need to diversify where we get just the revenue streams, but also where we can approach clients and have different kind of differentiating competitive advantages compared to these other launchpads, which really offer very similar services for similar fees. So this platform should be a very good step for us.
Yep. There we go. Well, hey, I'm excited for you guys. I've enjoyed getting to know you guys. I've enjoyed chatting off the podcast, on the podcast, and everything like that. I also respect you guys for being open and honest about what you know and what you don't know. I think that's an important thing. Nobody comes into the space knowing everything, but the fact that you guys are still here, because there's a lot of projects that minted back then that are dead now. We don't hear from them. We don't see them, whatever. So I give you guys a lot of credit for coming out here, having this conversation, talking about your experience, talking about, kind of what you did wrong, what you learned from that, and what you're planning on doing moving forward. And I'm also glad that we're not, like, and we talked about this before the podcast, but not holding you guys to these, like, if you guys came on here and you're like, this is exactly what we're going to do, we'd be literally going against everything we just talked about on this podcast of like talking to your community, making sure that you vetted every idea that you guys are doing, and that you've really created a community project where people really are invested in what you guys are doing. They've chatted with you guys about what you're doing, and that they've offered their advice and guidance and whatnot. And like, so I'm glad that you guys didn't come on here and you're like, all right, this is exactly it. It's like, no, you guys are still hammering out some of those details. You're also going to make sure that your community's involved with those decision making, and I love that. So I'm excited for you guys. Can you guys drop your socials? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at FatCatsAladdin.
And I'm Fat Cats Henny on Twitter, and Fat Cats Capital on the project pound.
But yeah, it's been a real pleasure meeting you these past few days, and like, thank you for having us on this podcast. Yeah, in terms of the community, like, we don't want to reveal too much on this podcast, but we are going to speak with them about what we're planning, because we do have a lot of sick ideas, and like, we want to roll them out in the best possible way and make sure that they gain as much traction as possible. And like, we have a lot of very smart people within the community, and we want to get their feedback as well. So,
and Mark, before we go, we got a little present for you.
Oh, right.
Oh,
yeah.
I like presents. Right. You got a bag of money for me?
Better.
Let's see what this is. Okay. Dude, I've actually had this. So I legit bought this. So I grew up in Michigan. Michigan, you go across the border and you got Canada right there. So I actually spent a lot of time going to Toronto and into Windsor and things like that. And so I legit think I might have bought the same exact bottle because I was like, it looks like a maple leaf. I love it. And so, dude, I'm actually a huge bourbon guy. And so bourbon and maple syrup is delicious.
That sounds amazing.
Is this a shot glass from what I'm feeling?
It is a shot glass, yeah.
There we go.
So we're from Montreal. This is our specialty, maple syrup.
Oh, there we go. So Montreal. Okay, I think everybody can see that. I'll make sure there's a photo in there.
We were told that you're supposed to take a shot of it, actually.
Okay. All right, so then what we'll do, okay, we'll wrap up the podcast in a second, and I will take a shot of some maple syrup. But before we do that, because I'm definitely going to do that over there, so I don't spill on my couch. This couch is too damn expensive. Couches would be expensive in a bear market. But I'm going to challenge you guys to continually have these conversations with your community and everything like that. And then what I'm going to challenge you guys to is that once you guys hammer out these details, and whatever you guys are closer to launching and stuff like that, if the timing of it makes sense, I'd love to have you guys back on for round 2 where we can talk more about the specifics and things like that, and also get into more of like what's coming in the future, with this episode kind of being more of a, hey, here's what we did, here's what we learned, here's where we're, a little bit more of where we're going. Next episode being more of like the actual details and things like that. Just kind of excited to see how everything plays out for you guys. So
100%. Awesome, I mean, we're also going to be hitting you up for your input, because especially off the podcast, you've had a lot of great ideas for us, and we really appreciate it.
Dude, I really want everybody to know, like, I want projects to succeed. I'm genuinely rooting for every single person. I also understand that there's going to be projects that come on here that don't, but to me, it's like, man, I want people to hit me up and ask for my advice and stuff like that, because I do have a unique perspective. I get to know a lot of project founders. I constantly do meetups. You guys saw what it was like last night. It's fun, and it's like that whenever we do them, And so for me, it's important to have these conversations, and it's important to have a lot of people coming together and thinking about the best ideas and things like that. And I want you guys to succeed. And hey, if you guys ever have an idea for the podcast, I want you guys to run that by me. It's like it's the team effort. That's what makes Web3 great, is that, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, traditional startup, you don't have that ability to connect with people. You don't have really the ability to connect with your consumers. This is something where we actually have that ability. And so, I want you guys to suggest ideas for me. I want to suggest ideas for you guys. And that's how we grow. That's how the space grows. That's how we mature. That's how, we just make the space that much more fun to be around and be in and everything like that. So
100%.
So, all right, I'm gonna rip this, and yeah, let's see. Let me, you guys will have to talk into the mic there and describe what's happening.
All right, we can narrate what's going on.
Yeah. Marc is opening up the bottle of maple syrup.
Have you guys taken a
No, we
shot
haven't.
of maple syrup?
You got to go first.
Oh, you do it when you get born, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That was a lot bigger than I thought you were going to pour. I'm not going to lie.
You want to show them how big the shot is? It's a decent amount.
Yeah,
I
don't know if you can show it,
actually.
actually.
You know what? I'll take a photo of it.
Yeah.
So people can see it's not capped.
No, it's real.
No, it's in there.
I saw him pour that.
We can confirm.
Yeah, that's a solid amount of some maple syrup. So we're just gonna go for this. So
cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah.
I mean,
It tastes amazing.
that was delicious.
Yeah, it's got
that
it.
was
Yeah.
Some high quality.
Man, Canadian maple syrup really does hit different. I'm about to add some to that Woodford Reserve over there.
Oh, beautiful.
But hey, that's the podcast. I'm really glad that it went down smooth. I thought I was just going to get like gunky in my mouth, and this was just going to be a disaster. I wasn't going to be able to talk the rest of this episode. But no, this was fun. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll chat soon.
All right,
Beautiful.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
No problem. See you guys.
See ya.
Peace.